Good evening and welcome to the March 2nd, 2023 Parks and Recreation Commission regular video meeting. I am Jody McCarthy, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. Tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff and consultant guests are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Additionally, the city has opened up the community center to provide public space for viewing and participating in the meeting. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Vice Chair Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Burstein.
Here.
Commissioner Markson. Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, Chair, we have 2 public appearances.
Okay.
I will be moving over Kelly Sim.
Okay. All right, Kelly.
I heard my name. Am I supposed to speak now?
Yes, and you have 3 minutes.
I apologize. I thought
Okay.
I was later in the agenda, so I wasn't quite ready to be very first, but I will do it. Okay, here I go. All right. Well, thank you, commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm sure you've heard the data on how pickleball is the fastest growing sport, how it's bringing together people of all generations and backgrounds, and how people's lives are being changed physically, mentally, and socially. And while data is important, I'm here to just share my story and observations. I've lived on Mercer Island for about 10 years now. My 2 kids went to IMS and MIHS and are now in college. And for the first 8 years, I met most islanders through my kids. Everyone was cordial, but it was hard to make inroads with families who were lifetime islanders and were parts of established circles. I get it, right? That's fine. I got friends too, right? But in my first year of playing pickleball at the Mercer Island Community Event Center in Luther, Burbank, I've met more people than in the last 9 years combined. And now we have the shared interest that connects us. We are obsessed together. I used to be a tennis player. I've actually played at the courts at Aubrey Davis, Homestead, and Luther Burbank. Very rarely were these courts full or used at all. The only full courts were at the country club. But it was too hard to find friends to play when I had time, right? And when I did, we would play singles for an hour, hour and a half max, and would just go to a happy hour afterwards. But pickleball is unlike any other sport. On any given dry day, you will find people all day long ready to include you in a pickup game, and you will play for hours. Standing at the volley line for most of the points, 4 people can be seen laughing together and high-fiving with paddles when a great shot is made, even if it's the other team. And so when I heard that the courts at Luther Burbank may become dedicated pickleball courts, I was ecstatic. For a state that invented pickleball, we have very few dedicated courts. The Bellevue Parks Board just recommended 8 courts with roof and lights. Not that we're in competition with Bellevue, but surely we can do better. I've played pickleball in Beverly Hills, Las Vegas, and at the vacation destination of Billings, Montana. The most memorable, though, was Billings. Do you know why? They had 8 dedicated courts at a tiny park in an obscure neighborhood. But it was filled with people who welcomed me in and asked if I was going to come back and play the next day. It's just that simple. Pickleball creates community. So my main point is this: we have a great opportunity to reimagine the courts at Luther Burbank into a gathering place for Islanders, established and new, and for non-Islanders too. It's not just a game of competition, it's a community building safe haven. And in the last few seconds I have left, I think I have a few seconds left, I'd like to address the overcrowding situation at the community center. 24 people can play at a time on 6 courts. Oftentimes, there are over 30 more people waiting around the gym. It's not only
10
frustrating
seconds.
to play for only 30 to 40% of the time and wait the rest, but it's dangerous for players running into folks on the sidelines. So most places cap the number of players. And unless we want to appear greedy and invite injury and allowing an infinite number of people in, we need to cap it at a safe number. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now our second and last speaker, Jessica Prince. I will be moving over now.
Okay. My name is Jessica Prince. I'm a 20-year Mercer Island resident, and I've been playing pickleball on the island for about 5 years. I am also the USA Pickleball Association's Mercer Island ambassador, and I've served on the board of the Seattle Metro Pickleball Association, a local 501c3 nonprofit advocating for more pickleball around the Puget Sound area. The pickleball community, as you heard from Kelly, is very excited and grateful for the courts to be renovated at Luther Burbank into pickleball. You commissioners will decide tonight on that third court, whether it is to be a shared tennis pickleball court or dedicated to pickleball. Now, there are many solid reasons why to have dedicated courts, and hopefully you'll read many of the emails that came in about that. But I want to focus on the one perhaps most important and compelling reason. For those of you unfamiliar with the respective cultures, tennis and pickleball courts are used very differently. Tennis players typically go to the court in pairs and play only with the people they come with, either singles or doubles. They play for an hour or so exclusively on one court and leave when they are done. Pickleball, on the other hand, is built on community play, where players typically show up on their own and mix in and play doubles with everyone else during very long drop-in sessions. The average game is 15 to 20 minutes, and there is constant turnover on the courts as players leave after each game and the next foursome takes the court. While waiting on the sidelines, pickleball players will congregate and socialize with each other. Players usually stay for a couple of hours. Now, the city has indicated that it would not create rules for how to share the court between tennis and pickleball, so players would be left to sort out usage on their own. So far, no one has ever come up with an equitable or easy way to manage dual usage courts. So shared courts would create tension and conflicts between tennis and pickleball players who, as I just explained, use the courts very differently. It'll also be confusing to both tennis and pickleball players trying to figure out when the right time is to go play on that court. And I know the last thing the city wants to do is to create conflicts between any park goers. So the solution is easy. Have dedicated pickleball courts at Luther Burbank and dedicated tennis courts at the other parks on the island. This way, instead of sharing an individual court between the two sports, we're actually sharing all the courts on the island between the two sports. Everyone will be happier, and there will be no unnecessary conflicts or tension. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last public appearance, Chair.
Thank you. All right, the first item on the agenda is the department report and update, and we will welcome Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
There we go. You should never start your presentation on mute. It doesn't work very well. Thank you, and I will jump in here. Please let me know, is that showing up correctly, Chair?
It is.
Awesome, let's hit the ground running then. Excited to highlight a couple staffing updates we have. I don't do this very often, but really exciting for us as we progress forward. Tom Flynn has been promoted to our park maintenance foreman. Jordan Fisher has returned as our volunteer coordinator. And Alex Lee is our new recreation facilities supervisor, which is very timely with some of the comments we received just a second ago regarding usage of the community center and aspects of pickleball and gym usage. So those are areas of his responsibility. And now that he's on board with us, I'm really excited as we move forward for what that looks like and the opportunities we have ahead. I also did put a link there below. We do have a number of positions the city is trying to hire for. I'll highlight some specific ones, being that in park maintenance and at the community center. These are the positions that support both the community center operations, but also our special events and park maintenance activities. So if you know of anybody interested, please forward that link on to them. Island lanterns. We are moving forward in a little thing. There we go. There we go. Popped up on my screen. Sorry about that. Island lanterns, busy weekend. A shout out to Sarah Bluvis, who coordinated this project and this community activity. We handed out a number of lantern kits over the last couple of weeks. Those were created and put together by community members, and they were placed at Mercerdale Park. We did make a last second change, moving from the Greta Hackett Sculpture Gallery to moving them to Mercerdale Park. They look great. It's brings a little bit of color this time of the year there to Mercerdale, I'm sorry. And it's a great opportunity for you to swing through and check those out. We will have them up through April. Depending on the weather, I'll just highlight the wind is not good for these lanterns. So wind may cause us to pull them down a little bit early, but that's something we'll be monitoring as we go forward. For those who didn't get their lanterns hung, you can drop them off at the community center, and we're happy to put those up for you. And just another thank you to Myval, Artswa, and the National Endowment for the Arts for supporting this project. And additional information is there at the link below. Some good news on the Luther Burbank Dock project. Last week, we received notification from the state's Recreation and Conservation Office regarding a grant request that had been put forward. The project ranked number 4 out of 14, and this puts us in a really strong position to receive $1 million in funding for that project. So very exciting as we move forward. We are anticipating to begin that project this year with completion in 2024. To date, we have received, or I shouldn't say received, but are looking forward or anticipating receiving $3 million in grant funds for this project, and the total cost is estimated to be $7.5 million. And additional information is updated on our Let's Talk page that's listed there below. Another fun item, the Arts Council is inviting local amateur and professional artists to enter a competition for design of island events. Specifically, the design is for Summer Celebration 2023. This design will be featured on the t-shirts that we wear each year. We have some very underpaid models there on the right with Elaine and another member of our public works team. And so we're always looking for opportunities to engage the community in the creation of these marketing materials. And this is a really good one. So the deadline for submissions is April 15th. And the link there below highlights the ways to go forward with submitting proposals. Maintenance and operations update. Some of you may have noticed some blankets that were out on the turf at Aubrey Davis Park. We use these blankets to help, I guess, grow the grass and make it stronger, essentially. We did see improved color and growth compared to the areas that weren't colored. So this is a tool that we'll continue to use in the future and monitor as we go forward. Leap for Green coming back, another event. It is on April 22nd. That's a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the community center. Activities will include entertainment, food trucks, various vendors, and more. I'll highlight the and more. We'll be highlighting some of our summer camps that we'll be offering. So it's a great opportunity for families to come by, check out the community center, and check out all those awesome opportunities that we'll have going forward with this event. And more information is included at the link below. You're going to see this slide a lot up until we hit summer celebration, which we're really looking forward to. July 15th, as a reminder, it'll be at Mercer Park and Luther Burbank. We have the fireworks on order. We're moving forward there. I am continuing to work with our team and other community members on a possible parade returning. It's looking very good as we move forward. So that'll be something that we're excited to highlight when that time comes. It is really critical, and this has been a huge area for us, is sponsorships. This is really a community supported event, and we do so through the sponsorships. So if you do know businesses or individuals interested in sponsoring, Katie Herzog's contact information is there below. It's a great opportunity to be involved in the event, and we have various levels that work. And I will say we currently have, I believe, $15,000 pledged in sponsorships thus far. So we're moving forward very effectively at this point. We had a little fun on Tuesday night. We had a slumber party at the community center. The recreation division partnered with the high school band to provide sleeping space for approximately 50 students in the Mercer Highland community center meeting rooms. The students were from Moses Lake Wind Ensemble, and they were taking part in the Mercer Highland School District Band Festival. And they performed early in the morning. I came in at 7 a.m. the following morning, and they were already gone, and the place was absolutely spotless. Just a huge thank you to them. They were an outstanding group of students who came in and utilized the facility, and a shout out to the staff that slept on cots in the lobby near the doors and chaperoned the activity. So very unique usage of your community center, but something that was really, really fun and opened up an opportunity for our high school students and that of Moses Lake coming over here as well. So very exciting. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Peter, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before we start the regular business agenda, I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda item tonight entitled clarification of the PRC recommendation to the City Council for the 30% design of the bike skills area. Just briefly, for those of you, I know some of us have read the staff memo to the city, and there's just some items I think we want to clarify and make sure that we're all on the same page with. So hopefully this is a very short item, but I think it's important that we're all on the same page. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion made by Vice Chair Struck and seconded by Commissioner Cohen. City staff, can we please have a roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Hay.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh. Thank you. Okay, so the motion is passed, so we will put it on at the end after we talk about pickleball. Or actually after, yeah, let's do it after pickleball, but before the planning schedule update. Okay. Commissioner Cohen.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay. The next item of regular business is to review and consider approving the minutes from the February 2nd, 2023 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 2nd, 2023 meeting, please? Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, I so move the approval of the February 2nd meeting minutes.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Hay. So there's a motion by Vice Chair Struck and a second by Commissioner Hay to approve the meeting minutes. City staff, can we still have, or can we do a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
and Commissioner Hay.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, the third item is the Aubrey Davis Park Trail Safety Improvement Project 30% design. And we welcome Paul West, a capital improvement project manager.
Thank you, Chair. Paul West, Senior CIP Project Manager. I'm joined tonight by the design team from KPG Somas and also by Christina Strand, WashDOT traffic engineer, who will be leading off. But first, I want Bryce Corrigan from KPG Somas to run through the three options that were in your staff report. This is for commissioners' benefit as well as anybody who is watching, just to understand what we are talking about when we say options 1, 2.1, and 3. So Bryce, why don't you take it on and we'll move along.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for the Parks Commission for having us again. So I will go ahead and share my screen if someone wouldn't mind confirming once I click the right buttons here. Can you see the graphic?
I can see it.
Okay, thank you. So through this discussion, option 1, we will be talking about the roundabout intersection treatment of the I-90 trail at the 72nd Ave Southeast overpass. Option 2.1 is a larger pavement area that expands the intersection to provide more usable space for all the users of this trail. And option 3 does not change any pavement typology, but does provide signage and channelization consistent with the other two options. So if there are, I could go into further detail, but I suspect we will be discussing these later. This is more of a reference point for each option as we move through the discussion. Paul, would you like me to share anything else regarding these?
No, that's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Christina Strand from WashDOT. Christina has been provided with some of the questions that have already come up in the January meeting and since the January meeting from the commissioners. So she is going to run through those questions first, and then we'll open it up to new questions that the commissioners may have of WashDOT staff. And Christina will answer those as she is able to. So Christina, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Christina Strand. I work for WashDOT. I am the area traffic engineer for King County Highways. I was given these questions. We're happy to be a resource to our local jurisdiction partners. The questions I have, I'm just going to read them out and do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge as it stands today. So the first question I was given was, how is safety improved with the roundabout in a diverse user area? Meaning, what are the mechanics or assumptions that result in a safety improvement for pedestrians, cyclists, dogs, and playing kids? So basically, when we were first shown the roundabout concept for the trail at Aubrey Davis for the intersection there near the baseball fields, the feedback that we gave the design team was, hey, it's a really cool, innovative concept, but it would probably be better served to have like a wider circulating roadway. And the reasoning behind that is by maximizing the area of what we would call a mixing zone in in a trail intersection like that, it allows you to maximize the maneuverability for folks using the trail. So by having those wider areas around a circulating or a center island of some sort, then you aren't like narrowed up at all. And so you can still have a bicycle passing, perhaps like a person walking a dog or somebody with a stroller that might be taking up more space. And you're less likely to have those conflicts between those users if they have more space to maneuver around each other. And so that's kind of the basic feedback that we would give the design team is, in general, maximizing the mixing zone in trail intersections is always considered kind of a good thing because it allows for maximum maneuverability, particularly when you have mixing modes, bicycles, pedestrians, etc. And then you also, when you're talking about an intersection of a trail, the other things you want to think about and maximize are the warning that the conflict point is coming. So giving people a heads up to be aware of their surroundings. You're approaching a trail intersection of some sort. And then also to maximize sight distance with kind of the same logic in mind. The sooner you can see that there's a conflict coming, the sooner or the better somebody can adjust to that. If they're on a bike, perhaps they can maneuver. All right. So that's kind of my stab at question one. The question two was, is there any way to reduce the size of option one, the roundabout? Again, it's sort of, the short answer is sure. I mean, from the discussions I've had internally, it sounds like the city kind of has a lot of authority to kind of choose what they want to, what enhancements they want to put on the trail out here. And so, our suggestion and our, general rule of thumb and preference is, bigger mixing zones are better. But if the city decides that they want to go in another direction for whatever reason, that's sort of within your authority to do so. But we were kind of basing our feedback on an existing trail roundabout in Washington State that isn't in WashDOT right of way. It's down in Lacey. I believe it is a Thurston County property, if I recall correctly. And then also, just talking about roundabouts in general and on a trail, it's sort of a novel treatment, but it is fairly common to see some sort of center island put at intersections at trails, mostly as like a speed mitigation device of some sort, basically to discourage folks from zipping through an intersection right down the middle with no care in the world as to who's coming from another direction. So by having the center island, it sort of forces a trail user who might be otherwise traveling quite quickly on a bicycle, for example, to be aware and to be ready to maneuver because they already know they have to maneuver around a physical obstacle of some sort. So it's just sort of another visual cue that, hey, be aware of your surroundings. So that was question two. Question three was, our options two, the smaller roundabout, option 2.1, just the larger mixing zone area, and option three, all acceptable to WashDOT? And the short answer is yeah. I think that it's not entirely clear to me that we're an approving authority on the design exactly. It's more of a feedback kind of relationship as I understand it. But as we were seeing it and as we've as I understand it, all three of the options are all an improvement from existing, right? It's all sort of throwing different degrees of mitigation at a intersection where perhaps there's been some conflict in the past. And so, whether it's just with optical speed bars and signing, which is sort of like the low cost, low footprint path, or a mixing zone, which does tackle those bullet points that I was alluding to earlier, as far as maximizing your mixing zone space in order to maximize the maneuverability of your users when they are in conflict with each other, gives them space for, bicycle to zip around someone with a dog, for example. where am I on question 4? Can you put up speed limit signs on the trail? And I had some internal conversations about this. We get this question quite often. As I understand it, you know, from a jurisdictional standpoint, I think that you could, if you wanted to. I think in our experience at the state, we generally don't, and I say generally, I can't think of any examples of the black on white regulatory speed limit signs on trails, mostly because there isn't, at this point, like a solid expectation that a bicyclist will know how fast they're going and to be able to actively abide by a speed limit with any sort of knowledge. So we generally don't do that. But one thing that might be something to consider that maybe is a thing you can do is use what we call advisory speeds, which are the black on yellow signs that kind of act as just sort of a heads up to people of like, hey, you know, maybe you should slow down a bit because there's a reason up here to slow down. It's similar to advisory speeds on curves on a roadway. Ideally, vehicles slow down to those advisory speeds as they navigate curves, but a lot of times they don't. But it does give your average driver a heads up that, hey, you should probably slow down when approaching this curve from whatever speed you were going prior to entering the radius. Question 5 was, can we require cyclists to walk their bikes through the congestion area? And I'm assuming in this case, that means like the intersection zone or perhaps even through where the baseball fields are. And the short answer is, I think so. I mean, I don't think there's any legislation prohibiting it specifically. I think the issue that you would run into with something like that would be compliance. In general, just sort of traffic engineering rules of thumb is it's generally not best practice to rely exclusively on signage to change behavior. It's best to have a design that helps encourage that change in behavior, because if you just throw up a sign, somebody might miss it. A lot of people aren't paying really close attention to signs as much as we might want them to. So after having some additional conversations internally, we kind of landed on, you think you could do that? I don't know that that's really like a solution that is going to be as effective as you might want it to be, is sort of the short answer there. And that I went through that way quicker than I thought I would, but those are the 5 questions that I had here. And the 6th question is other questions.
So now is a chance for commissioners to raise other questions that you might have to ask.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes, Don Cohen. Thank you for that presentation. That was helpful. Did you have an opportunity to give any consideration to the slow down along with, let's say, option 2.1 or 3? In other words, I understand what you were saying, that just, slow down, there's something coming up, may not by itself mitigate whatever the problem may be as much as you would like it to. How about in combination with anything? Is there any example that you can tell us about that you're aware of?
Other examples on trails where I think, and I can let the design team jump in a little bit, but I think their plan had both intersection warning. They were using pavement markings, like slow written on the pavement itself, approaching, at least on the version I'm looking at. It's quite small, so you might not immediately see it on the graphic, but please.
Yeah, Commissioner Cohen, all 3 options use multiple forms of treatment to, 1, advise users to slow down their approaching an intersection. Options 1 and 2.1 go a step further and do the pavement enhancements or increase the pavement for the mixing zone at the intersection location. So the signage and the channelization markings on the trail are consistent through each option.
Thank you.
Commissioner Westberg?
This is just for clarification. Paul, I had a number of questions that in the matrix, it was indicated they would be addressed by the design team. Is that a subsequent discussion, or are those questions that should be raised at this point?
most of those questions, I think, will be deferred to the design team after we've finished talking to Christina. That way she can leave if she chooses to.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Burstein.
This is Paul Burstein. Christina, does the state have experience with the thermoplastic paint that's applied to the pavement, whether that creates a very slick surface for bicyclists and actually potentially creating a hazard instead of preventing a hazard?
I'm not immediately familiar with the cyclists and thermoplastic paint. I can say that we do use thermoplastic paint. Our maintenance crews, that is the primary material type that they use to do striping work for with maintenance. Our project teams, like if it's a capital project, they use the MMA, which is more hardened plastic. But to my knowledge, I'm not sure if we've used, I don't know off the top of my head. I would need to ask if there's any sort of data showing thermoplastic being slick for bicyclists, but I do know that the thermoplastic pavement marking types is what is generally used by our maintenance crews for striping treatments on roadways. I'm just not entirely sure if there's any sort of special data for the interface with bicycles.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Westberg.
Thank you. Christina, you mentioned the Lacey example as a bicycle roundabout that's in place now. My understanding is that roundabout is on a level surface where two trails come together. And what we're talking about here, I think, is more complicated because it's actually on a slope and on a curved slope at that. Do you have any awareness of a similar installation, i.e. a roundabout on a slope, and how that has been addressed from a design standpoint or a functional standpoint?
I'm not immediately familiar with any roundabouts on slopes for trails. Specifically, there just aren't that many examples in the state, just the one for now. And there's one of my colleagues down at Olympia can probably rattle off examples of all kinds of roundabouts all over the country, but I'm not blessed with that skill. But as far as roadway roundabouts, we have many more examples of those, and slopes are always a challenge. But what generally happens when we have some conflicting slopes at an intersection and the roundabout is still identified as the solution is it involves some grading. And so basically there's earthwork involved to sort of try to level out the grades and find some sort of medium. It is acceptable to have a certain amount of like longitudinal grade in your roundabout to a certain degree. As far as those numbers, I cannot rattle them off the top of my head. And then what you really got to watch out for is your cross slopes on the other direction. And so it becomes a design challenge, but it doesn't have to be completely flat. Your final, at least for roadways, and the examples that I can rattle off a few of them that are in design or built now. We're designing one at the interchange of I-5 and 145th Street right now, where grades are going to be a huge consideration, because as soon as you go to the west, there's a big hill and there's also ramps coming on from below. So you got essentially a side street coming on from this direction, and then the main line is sort of going up like this. And the challenge in the design and the roundabout will probably end up being slightly like along the longitudinal slope, but then also needing to like grade in the cross streets. So it just becomes a design challenge that you play around with in your three-dimensional modeling to try to get it all to work. And also you have to consider, for roadways, you have to consider drainage as well. I'd imagine for a trail, it maybe is less of a concern because there's less impervious pavement.
Thank you for that.
I guess while I'm on that, the other thing that I would say about that is that because you have to grade it a little bit, what that would do in your primary grade, it could be a bit of a leveling slightly, which could also act as some form of speed mitigation. Just because you're no longer constantly on a single grade, you have to sort of come into, whether it be totally level, maybe not, but maybe slightly less of a slope is also a possibility through design. And I haven't seen three-dimensional drawings of this particular concept, so I'm not sure where they're at in that. The design team can probably speak to that better than I can.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Christina? It's
Okay,
looking like no.
looks like we might be all through with questions for you, Christina. I really appreciate your time coming here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Excellent evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now is a time for possibly Commissioner Westberg's questions and other questions in the matrix. If they, I mean, some of them are answered in the matrix, and some of them we didn't have time for the design team to address them, and some of them are probably better addressed as a live discussion rather than as a summary answer. So I want to open this up now to allow the design team to go through some of those questions that were in the question and answer matrix. Liz, do you want to lead on that? Do you want me to read questions off? How would you like to proceed?
Sure. We could just lead off. I can read them. That's fine. Just going through as Paul has said, some of them, for the most part, we got them today. So for the most part, we've done our best to answer them. And as you said, definitely have a discussion around them as we're working through them. The first one, I believe, was from Commissioner Cohen. And this one, I think Paul, the staff answered, will there be a drawing of the roundabout area at option 1? And of how it would actually look from the ground level to a bicycle rider or walker. I'm trying to visualize the real world. We do not have a rendering of the intersection options at this point. We could, Paul suggested we could meet you out on the site and walk you through some of those things to try and get to help you visualize it at this point.
Jody, this is Don. Do you want to wait for, because I have a follow-up question on that one, but I can wait. It's not critical.
No, okay, why don't you do it and we'll just keep going down since that was your
All right.
question.
Well, I just wondered, thank you for that, and thanks for staff's response. But I mean, is that a big deal to do that kind of thing? I have no idea at this point how high that middle area of the roundabout might be. I know that somebody will say, well, that'll be done in further design work. I don't have any idea whether a bicyclist would be able to ride over it if they wanted to, or walk a stroller over it. So I don't have a good sense of what this will look like. I remember the photograph of the Lacey one. So I don't know if that would be a big deal or not. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's definitely something that we can do. And maybe if we are moving more in that direction, I would recommend then we could provide something. I think there was another question about the center roundabout and whether that was rideable. And we do have a discussion on that later down. And if that's the commission would like to see a graphic like that, we can definitely produce something if it would help. Bryce, I think, did you want to?
Commissioner Cohen, I just want to clarify one thing about your question. Are you referring to the roundabout vertical geometry as a whole, or just the centerpiece? How the whole thing will look from a cyclist, or how just the centerpiece will look? The centerpiece, I can tell you from the options that have been presented through the staff report, those slopes in that option will be consistent with other urban slopes you'd see throughout the town center, like for example, a curb ramp coming up from a crosswalk through an intersection, the ramp that goes up to the sidewalk. We wouldn't put anything in the intersection that would exceed those already existing slopes in urban environments. As far as the whole intersection, how that vertical geometry is laid out, like Christina was saying, it does take quite a bit of effort to iron out all the grading and transitions back to the existing features. So we're not quite there yet, but the center, just the middle, the median would be, those slopes would be consistent with other urban slopes you'd see throughout Mercer Island and other urban environments. Hopefully that clarifies the distinction between those two features.
Yeah, thank you, Don Cohn. I was focusing on the highest point, sort of, what's that going to be like, right in the middle. But your comment about, consistent with other treatment in Mercer Island and other communities, that's what I can't visualize in the context of a roundabout coming down a hill and at a curve. So anyway, but thank you.
There is also the cross section of the option 1 that you have on your plan set that you could show that gives some idea of the profile.
Well,
yes,
can I ask you a technical question on that one? Unless I read this wrong, the scale on option 1 and 3 says 0 to 60 feet. On 2.1, it says 0 to 30 feet, unless I wasn't reading it right. And so if I was reading it right, I wasn't sure whether it was apples and apples or just a typo or whether I didn't read it right. So, but
that could have very easily been a typo, but why don't I pull up?
Well, it's okay. You don't have to spend time on that right
Okay.
now. I was just responding to Paul's comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jody, this is Commissioner Westberg. Before going specifically to the questions, I don't know, it would be helpful for me if, Liz, if you could just sort of make some general comments about the design issues that you guys that you addressed in terms of designing the roundabout and kind of where it is, why it is where it is, and some of the challenges that you think we face or that you have proposed resolutions for in terms of placing a 44-foot wide concrete structure in that particular place.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll do my best to walk you through some of that. And Bryce, feel free to run through that. Hang on a second while I'm just pulling up some notes so I can work my way through it so that it makes sense for everybody. I mean, generally, as everyone knows, the goal of the work in this particular area was to improve the function and the accessibility for this trail segment, especially in that intersection area. And through our discussions with WashDOT over the original options that have been gone through, there were 3 criteria that came up and were evaluated. So most importantly, to improve sightlines, to improve the advanced warning of the oncoming intersection in that area, and as well as importantly increasing usable space for trail users to be able to navigate through that intersection. So keeping those 3 criteria in mind, that's what we were looking at when we came up with the options originally. That were the 2 options. One of them was just the roundabout, and the second one was the more open kind of plaza area that didn't have the roundabout, just had the mixing zone in it. So as we worked through those options, we took them to WashDOT, and as you heard Christina saying, that the one with the roundabout, their preference was to increase the pavement area around it to allow for more maneuverability around in that intersection and provide space for people going both directions, because as you're coming, say, down the hill and riding around through it, you may encounter somebody coming from the north direction that decides, hey, I just want to go up to the baseball fields, whatever. I'm going to cut around to the left. I'm not going to go the right. You can't predict which way people go. So in consequence, we've increased the trail pavement section around it to provide for that movement. So that's why there's a 12-foot or close to 14-foot usable space area around that roundabout area. The second one looks at just increasing that mixing zone area space to make it more maneuverable, to give you more comfort as you're going through. Both of those options provide all three of the things that I mentioned, that improvements to sight lines, advanced warning, and usable space. However, the second one with the sort of plaza area does bring up some question in that this space is a trail intersection, and that design leans more towards it becoming a mixing zone plaza area, which could give some mixed signals about how it's used and how people go through it. And it also doesn't prevent people coming down the hill from just blasting right through it. So that's kind of some of the main differences between those two designs. The third one is obviously a little bit lighter touch, where we just look at the existing intersection and try and provide improvements to it, but the two improvements that it fulfills are improvements to sight lines, and that would be removing vegetation and that kind of thing, and then improvements to the advanced warning of the intersection as you're coming in and out of it. Let's see, I think that kind of covers all three of those and gives you a sense for how those pavement areas became part of the design, and how they've evolved into the roundabout with the wider paved surface around it. And then the mixing zone plaza area is another option without the raised roundabout center in it. I think that did that sort of cover everything. Bryce, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just like to add that through our initial discussions with WashDOT, the roundabout referenced is the Chehalis Western Trail and the Woodland Trail down in Thurston County, Lacey area. That one has a diameter of 50 feet. And originally they were pushing to get us closer to that size of a facility at this location. However, due to our feedback we've and received from the commission and the community, that that footprint was just not going to work at this location. So we were able to work with WashDOT closely and settle on this, the design that was put forth, the 44-foot option, which does meet all those criteria that Liz described, as well as the roundabout does additionally provide an element of speed control with that center median that users would likely have to navigate around ahead of the mixing zone plaza space by the restroom. So just wanted to add that in there. Rory, did you ask about constraints we were under as well? Did I hear that too?
It's possible.
Well, just yeah,
I
just
mean, there are site constraints, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't be able to fit 50 feet into that area.
You are correct about that. Yeah, just a few of the constraints. The obvious one is the overpass. There's a structural column directly adjacent to the trail. The vegetation that will have to be not just improved with this project in any option that's selected to move forward, but also managed for the rest of time at the trail that this intersection is used, to make sure it doesn't become overgrown again. The grade challenge certainly coming from the tennis court area down to the restroom ball field area is a design challenge. And we feel all three of these options can overcome those through certain improvements. And as Christina kind of alluded to earlier, they're there's three options. One, one's good, one's better, one's probably could be considered the best option, right? However, it's ultimately finding the balance that something can move forward.
Mhm.
Those are just a few of the constraints, not to mention, I don't want to bring in the budget, but
Yeah.
there's another constraint, right?
That is another constraint. Another thing I just wanted to add that as you were talking, Bryce, is the consideration for the future use of this trail. The population is growing in the area. The regional trail is going to get used more and more. Of people are commuting, bicycles, sound transit's coming in, and as you know, they're almost completed with that. They will get. We believe that there's going to be more users coming from the city center area and down onto the trail to get into town or to their residences. And as we move forward, the commission should consider how any one of these options is going to grow or need to be, in the case of the option one, how long will those improvements last to keep people moving through it and to keep that facility viable as in the coming years. I think that's, did we cover your question? I think we can, I tried to
Yeah,
walk through
that's a
everything.
good overview, I think.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Jody, can I just ask one more follow-up?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify back to what Bryce was saying about challengers. I was down there today looking at the site, and it looks like your plan actually, in order to provide enough clearance for the roundabout to avoid contact with the support column for 72nd Avenue, it looks like the actual center of the roundabout is moved uphill, upslope somewhere, I'd guess 8 to 10 feet, which means that a cyclist coming down that slope is actually going to have less time to react to the fact that they need to slow down in order to safely go around that roundabout. Assuming that the roundabout stays it'll be sloped downward, but it would stay at the grade of the existing trail, which is a concern to me because even if we add lighting and things like that, a cyclist is going to have to be very alert to the fact that there not only is there a roundabout there, but it's coming up fast and you'll need to prepare. Is that correct, that in fact it has moved uphill, or the roundabout would move uphill?
Yeah, that's an accurate observation, Commissioner. We did provide more space from that existing support column in option one, the roundabout, by moving the center of the intersection. I think you said 8 to 10, it might be closer like 5 to 8, but let's just settle on 8 feet.
Okay.
By moving that center of the intersection 8 feet to the west. Yes, and then all of the subsequent advanced warning moves uphill as well. So the distance from the tennis courts to the roundabout will reduce, but the treatments will all be adjusted accordingly as well. So
and does that mean you'll have to do more grading on the west and east sides in order to keep it flat?
I don't want to give you a 100% answer on that one because we're not to that stage yet, but it is likely that more grading in both option 1 and option 2.1 will be required as we are expanding the footprint of the paved surfaces. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There will need to be some grading to level out that plaza or roundabout intersection, whatever that turns out to be. So likely that means bringing up the grade to the west, so it flattens out a little bit as it gets towards the intersection, and then it steepens up a little towards the east and north to balance out that, that raised up to, so you can get a almost level intersection for that. So that will help kind of mitigate the speeds coming in as you decrease the percentage of the slope coming into it.
Okay.
All right, look at the matrix again and just make sure that we've answered all of the questions on the matrix.
Sure.
I think we went
We
through a few of
touched on
those
a
with that
couple of
discussion.
I know, exactly. That's why I was trying to make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah, I think question 2 has been answered already by WashDOT.
Mhm.
Let's skip question 3 for now because that's a process question. That was the one about.
This is Vice Chair Stuck. On question 2, could I have a chance to kind of ask something?
Yeah, sure.
So, it says how is improved with roundabout in a diverse use area. So the way I try to think of it is you've got pedestrians, walkers that are probably going, say, 2 to 3 miles an hour, right? And you've got bicyclists coming down the hill that are probably could be up to 15 miles an hour. So, a huge differential there. And I think, again, the idea is to try to minimize that differential down through signage and potentially design. And so the specific question I have to the consultants is, with the roundabout as currently drawn, a bicyclist coming down the hill decides I'm not going to obey the signs or whatever, or going quote unquote fast. How much will the design slow that bicyclist down? Let's say there's no people there. It's, it's 6:30 in the morning. Do we know what that reduction in speed will be, if any?
Quantitatively, I can't give you a number. I can tell you how mini roundabouts in roadway applications and single lane roundabouts in roadway applications have reduced speeds. I don't have the speed data off the top of my head. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, I completely understand, in a automotive sense of how roundabouts, slow vehicles down. I just don't have a sense here. Will this roundabout behave the same way and, take cars down? Because again, I think that the difference is, from the automotive example is all the vehicles entering are kind of coming at the same speed, more or less. Here you have this huge differential. And so, we're essentially trying to slow the one participant or user group down. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great consideration. And the principles behind roundabout design and the deflection of the user, whether it's a pedestrian or a cyclist will have to slow down to deflect around that center island. Otherwise, they will be going up and over it, which is an uncomfortable ride.
Right.
Which, again, I don't have the number, but I would expect a cyclist traveling at 20 to slow down prior to maneuvering around that deflection angle as you're entering the roundabout. Which that combined with the increased sight lines through the construction and vegetation management would allow the user traveling at a different speed to not only see the cyclist coming down, but allow the cyclist to see the other user. But as you stated, at 6:30 in the morning, there's no users. Unless they want to ride over that, little ramp in the middle, they're going to have to slow down to deflect around that center island. And that would be my expectation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think where I kind of come down at is, if somebody's traveling at 15 or 20, and irrespective of whether there's any people there or not, the design of the roundabout is going to have them slow down to 5 miles an hour, just to pick a number. And I say, 5 people are walking at 2 or 3. That's pretty good. But if the answer is, well, they could, kind of break once or twice but still zip around at 10, 12, 14, then I'd say, I'm not sure how effective that's going to be. So anyway, but if we don't have the answer, we don't have the answer. Thank you.
Okay, so that was question 2. The next question for the design team that to address is number 4. Do you want to take that on, Liz?
Yeah, either maybe Bryce or Nandez, you can answer
Sure.
this one. Thanks.
Yeah, I can start it out. So as designed under option 1, this kind of goes along with Commissioner Struck's discussion. What is the maximum safe speed for cyclists going downhill through the roundabout? Reviewing WashDOT's Chapter 15 shared use path guidelines, their design speed for intersections is 12 miles per hour. On grades, it's slightly higher, but we would work towards intersection control measures that would get cyclists slowing down as they approach this intersection, but also traveling at their design guidance speed of 12 miles per hour. Nandez, please jump in if you have any other thoughts there.
And that's WashDOT's design guidance for intersections. You know, the way to try and help control this and get it down to something everybody's comfortable with is how, you know, how we approach the design coming into the roundabout as well as going around it for how tight those turns are. So once, you know, if this is the option we move forward with, once we get into design, we, you know, start looking at the angles and the radiuses to kind of figure out how quickly folks could move through that, and then kind of play with changing those, tweaking those a little bit to make sure that we're kind of, you know, balancing folks coming into the intersection, slowing them down as they approach, so they're not, you know, braking really hard as they come into it, and, you know, do a more gradual slowdown and coming into the roundabout at an appropriate speed, so they aren't, you know, coming in 10, 15 miles, you know, per hour faster than the pedestrians that are going around there. So it's hard to kind of quantify at the moment, but that's how you get, once you get into the design, you can start working that out with the angles and the radiuses to reduce those speeds and make it uncomfortable for them to go any faster than that. I mean, they could technically do it, but.
And this location is challenging because of the slope of the existing trail. However, introducing smaller horizontal curves ahead of this intersection is a method, in addition to the other treatments that you guys have been seeing throughout this process.
But that would involve removing more pavement and replacing pavement, right?
That would, yes.
Okay, so I think, does that help answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. I think the next one, let's see. Commissioner Westberg asked for examples where similar roundabouts have been used to slow intersections going downhill to an intersection. We don't have any, I think we discussed this, we don't have any specific examples that are actually designed for that instance where people are coming in, going down a hill into an intersection. The 2 roundabouts that we've been bringing up as an example from the one in Wisconsin and the Olympia examples were installed to facilitate user movement through those intersections, and both of them, one of them, I believe the Olympia one does have a slight hill as it's coming into it, but neither of them have the kind of slope grade coming into the intersections that we do. So we don't have any specific examples at this time to cover that. We did kind of discuss, so there's a question about the estimated cost for completing planning and design. I think, Paul, you answered this.
Mhm. Yeah, I gave those are gonna, I think we should treat those numbers as relative numbers.
At this point, yeah.
At this point,
Yeah. Commissioner Westberg again, possible for cyclists to leave the ground if they ride too fast over the center of the roundabout as designed in option 1. Yes. I mean, it's possible if they're going fast enough, but I think Bryce was talking about how that the center of it is designed as the slopes of that race center are consistent with other accessible grade challenges and traffic calming design devices in urban environments. So it's the same thing as if I was riding my bike down a street, and sometimes, I mean, some of the bumps that they put in streets for people to ride over to slow down are going to be quite a bit more extreme than this one's going to be. And we do have a section showing that, and we've reduced it down. So I think you would have to be going really fast to get airborne, but you know, like I said, anything's possible. So,
Well, I
So-
pose that question, if I may just clarify, because the last thing we want to do is create a hazard
right.
there for an unwary cyclist. And if you're already moving the center of this upslope so that a cyclist is going to have less time to react, and then you have a ramp in the center that will in effect elevate their trajectory if they don't make the turn, you could have a problem. Particularly again, because of the challenges of the site and the fact that you're on a incline.
Well, I think we're pretty confident that putting in some of the speed control warning signs and the devices that we're doing in before you get to that intersection to slow people down. There's also, once you come down the slope, there will be we're putting lighting in as well. And there's I mean, when you reach the bottom of the slope, you're not going to hit that bump. You've got a portion of pavement that's at least 14 feet wide to turn and go around it. So I guess a reasonable person riding it, it shouldn't be an issue. But
And with the slope and the vegetation cleared off, yes, the intersection is coming a little bit farther to the west, but there's also very good visibility coming down that hill to see the intersection coming. People are generally not slowing down because it's downhill with the grades, but it is not that you can't see the intersection. So it would be very visible coming down the hill. So they would, you know, have plenty of time to adjust their speeds accordingly, even with the shift. It's just a question of, you know, adjusting their behavior as they approach it.
Yeah. Okay.
And speaking of adjusting behavior, that is part of the intent as cyclists are approaching the mixing area by the restroom. Because we definitely do not want cyclists speeding through that area where there's a high mixed use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So any further questions on that? The next one, I think we touched a little bit about the landscaping that's going to be disturbed by the roundabout is designed under option 1. So the actual disturbance of the landscaping around that area will be disturbed with all 3 alternatives. The point behind the maintenance and removal of vegetation is to increase sight lines and make it safer no matter which option we're going for. So there's not really much difference in the way that we're going to treat vegetation removal with all 3 of them. For option 1, we'll be removing it probably to do some more grading. If you go all the way through those options, for option 3, we'll be removing it anyway to increase that sight distance and make it safer. So it's mostly the shrub material that's the problem, the vegetation that's at, you know, eye height if you're riding or if you're walking it. So it'll be the largest shrub material. There is 1 or 2 trees that potentially will come out because if we do options 2 and 3, because we'll need to grade round them to increase the graded flat area for it. I believe that 1 of them may come out anyway with all 3 options, but we're still reviewing that with, you know, as we move through the design. So there's not very many trees that will come out. Mostly we'll be looking at the health of them. If they're not healthy, there's a lot of trees along that corridor that need to be removed anyway. They may be limbed up to help sight distance, and that kind of thing. So in answer to that question. Let's see. Commissioner Westberg, how will the roundabout mitigate anticipated increase in traffic volume? It will potentially accommodate more traffic volume and mitigate speeds, but not volume. I'm not really quite sure this was that.
I think that's my
okay.
misuse of the term mitigate. I think Commissioner Westberg is probably correct that there's nothing that the roundabout is going to do to reduce traffic volume, or it's simply going to be able to handle more traffic volume.
Exactly. Yeah. As a roundabout design, or both of those, the 2 and 3 will increase the usable intersection space. And so that's going to accommodate the potential increase in users and volume of riders, but it's also going to make it easier for people to move around in that mixing zone to be more usable for everybody. We touched on which option was preferred by WashDOT. The other two options are acceptable to WashDOT as well. Commissioner Westbird, why was the smaller roundabout option we looked at 2 months ago taken off the table in favor of the mixing zone? I think we touched upon that the smaller roundabout option did not meet WashDOT design guidance, and that so kind of that shifted to the larger roundabout paved area, and we brought back the sort of plaza mixing zone instead. Commissioner, let's see. I think we talked about WashDOT having final approval of design. Commissioner Burstein asked about that. WashDOT as a landowner has a right to reject the design, but we've been working with them as closely as possible to come up with a mutually acceptable solution. And they've indicated that all three options are acceptable at this point in degrees of scale. And then the last question is to do with
That's about budget and
funding. Yeah.
Yeah. So and there's a number of different ways we could get additional funding for this project. It might delay the project, but they're out there.
Yeah. So I think that covers all of the questions that we got before the meeting. If there's at this point, do we open up for more questions or?
See, Commissioner Cohen has his hand up.
Yes, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'd like to be sure. Putting aside cost, does the consultant team, the design team feel, well, I won't lead you. What option do you feel is safest, taking into account all of these things you've learned, analyzed, heard today, seen in the written record, et cetera?
Okay, I'll go first and the others can chime in after me, because we've had a lot of discussions about this, as you might understand. We would feel that given the facility and the use of that area as an trail intersection, that the option 3, the roundabout, is the
Option one.
option one. Yeah, I'm sorry. I get them all like, I think they're mislabeled on what they're coming up, but the roundabout, I'm just going to call it the roundabout now. That is the one that provides the most usable interaction space for all of the users, and that will carry forward into the future, whether if there's more volume of riders and users for the park. So in scale of order, I would say the roundabout, the plaza, and then as a kind of a mitigation one would be the one with just the striping and no other pavement changes.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I'm not gonna leave you. I'm not gonna leave you hanging, Liz. Don't worry. Yeah, option one, the roundabout. I think we would see the most measurable impact on user behavior if that one was to be taken forward, because that is the greatest change from the existing condition. It will be, it'd be designed per all of the guidance we've discussed at length to be safe and usable for all types of users in any situation. We can't design for the outlier, just like roadways can't be designed for the outliers. But as far as the goals of this project and the larger I-90 trail through the island, I think the roundabout would be, we would see the most benefit, maybe not in 1 year, but in 10 years as volumes increase, user behavior would definitely change at this location.
Yeah.
Is.
Yeah, I agree. I think option one, the roundabout option, is kind of it's a good balance between doing an intersection improvement that widens and gives everybody more usable space. It also helps direct traffic so that not everybody's going to do it, but generally their habits are going to be a little bit more predictable. Most people are going to follow the rules, especially when there's a lot of people around and a lot of congestion. And this has the added benefit of slowing people down when they're using that intersection. So it really, if you can't see someone coming around the bridge, coming from the park side, or you've got a little bit more space to deal with what's out there, and people are coming in at speeds that can better handle some surprise of someone coming around the corner, or a dog or a kid stepping out in front of them. There's more maneuverable space for them to adjust course.
City Council Member Reynolds.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick one. I'm not a traffic engineer, as you all know, but when my understanding is that when you want to slow down cars, one of the most effective ways to do it is to narrow the roadway. And here we seem to be talking about increasing the path width in order to make it more safe, which seems kind of contrary to my understanding of how it generally works with traffic flow. So can you just comment on how to reconcile those two ideas?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it first.
Okay.
Bikes and pedestrians, they're not vehicles. Their movements are significantly less predictable than a traveling car, and increasing width on trails is generally considered especially when it's a multi-use facility with multiple directions of travel, increasing the width is generally the accepted practice for providing more safe space for all types of users, regardless of age and ability. Hopefully that starts answering your question.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just the difference here is including the angles and curves to slow them down, instead of using the angles and curves to slow them down, instead of narrowing the space, which we do a lot in lanes, but not necessarily at intersections. So, traveling in between intersections, that's a very effective way often to slow traffic down. But at intersections, we're usually widening out again to accommodate more users and to safely get everybody through those intersections.
Okay. I have one additional question, but I'll wait until everybody else had a turn if you like.
For
Okay. This may be an academic question only, since it appears that WashDOT is comfortable with all three designs, but I just want to confirm my understanding. I believe Ms. Gibson indicated that WashDOT had to approve the design, but Ms. Strand, when she testified, specifically said that she didn't know that WashDOT was an approving authority on this. So does anybody know the real answer?
I can tell you
Bryce
we will
can
have
answer that
to
one. Yeah.
we will have to go through the basis of design reporting procedures through the State
Mhm.
Department of Transportation as it is their property.
Mhm.
And we will have to apply for a construction permit, at which time we will provide them our plans for review and comment. That duration of time and their evaluation of the proposed design at the permit submittal stage does come under all of the WashDOT jurisdictional review. I can't tell you what they're going to say now.
So they can make a comment, but do we have to do what they say?
It's my understanding we can't proceed with construction until they issue a construction permit.
If I may,
Go
Councilmember Jason Skinner, Chief of Operations. So in other projects around the island, and I'll use an overpass structure, which has similar maintenance ownership responsibilities as here. So in this particular area of the trail, it's a state-owned property maintained by the city. As you heard, WashDOT staff this evening talk about the collaboration. So oftentimes for these projects, we're collaborating early with WashDOT staff to make sure that the project is designed and engineered that meets both the city standards as well as the state standards, because ultimately, as Bryce is talking about, when it goes to the permitting process, you want that conversation already take place to make sure that the construction activities that will be implemented have already been essentially pre-approved and discussed prior to that permit submittal. Ultimately, as the state's property, they do have a permitting authority here. They do have to approve the design that will be submitted for it, whether or not it's, whether or not Ms. Sanders understood that this evening, they will have to approve the permit for construction because it is state-owned property.
Thank you.
Does that help? I think possibly she may have been saying that, there are 3 viable alternatives from their point of view in front of them. And they're not saying you have to do this one, or this one, but we need to make sure that all those alternatives, if we do submit one of them, that they're going to approve it because we need their approval for construction. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, we went through a very similar process when the city improved the West Mercer Way trail crossing. We had to elevate it through the WashDOT review process as it's next to their on-ramp. So, and that one was, they provided comment, we addressed the comments, and we went through that cycle with them. And, I think that project's been pretty successful.
Yeah, we will also have to provide them a basis of design. And during that process, we write up all of these steps that we've taken to get to the option that we're going to submit to them. So that will help with that process as well. Any more questions?
I don't see any more questions. All right, does anybody want to take a stab at a motion after we've heard all of this good information and had our questions answered? Commissioner Westberg.
Actually, I do have, I'm sorry, I do have another question.
That's okay.
Are the pavement markings shown in the schematic for option 1, are those thermoplastic? Is that the assumption that those would be thermoplastic, or are they pavement paint, or has that been decided, or?
I believe we're going with paint on this trail, as that's the city's preferred maintenance stance.
Oh, okay, because prior presentations had shown thermoplastic bars across the trail. So we've abandoned those at this point as a design option.
I wouldn't say abandoned.
Right. Not necessarily.
The city's maintenance preference is paint.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's what we'd
so we'll assume paint
with.
at least for this point.
Yep.
Right.
And okay. I guess I thought I had another question, but I can't find it. So, okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you. I had a question on the, there was a handout sent out called Sample Motions for Aubrey Davis Trail Safety Improvements. And under motion 1, I understand 1, 2, and 3. I don't quite understand option 4 under motion 1. So if somebody from staff could speak to what is implied there.
I'm just pulling that up.
Thank you, Paul.
So a position that we anticipated could be a viable route forward is to partly because of budget, right? All these options are over budget, but options 1 and 2.1 are hugely over budget. Option 3 is closer to budget. There's also been some interest on the part of, I believe, Vice Chair Struck and others to try less invasive alternatives before trying the more invasive ones. And so this motion is to include option 3 in a 30% design package as a phase 1 of construction. And then include option 1, the roundabout, as a second phase of construction that could be considered in a future year if city council determines it's needed and if funding is available.
And
And
just to elaborate a little more, if I may, Paul.
yeah,
The phasing approach that Paul described and we've been discussing, we could really monitor user behavior with option 3. If it changes significantly and people are coming back and saying the trail is safer, this intersection is great, thank you, city. You've put the Illumineer in, you've made it really safe, everybody can see, bikes aren't going 30 miles an hour down the hill anymore. Maybe there's not a need for more invasive treatments at this location. However, as volumes increase, different types of users are introduced on the trail. With that 4th motion, it would allow seemingly allow an easier path forward to do a heavier treatment at this location.
and to tag on that is, having that roundabout option as a second phase sets us up for grant funding if we decide to go for that. So in other words, if it's already in a design that's been approved at some level, that can be used to apply for grants for that phase of design, for that phase of construction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hay?
Thanks. If there aren't any further questions, I'm ready to make a motion at this point.
All right, Commissioner Westberg, did you have a question or are you ready to go?
I just have a quick clarifying question, and Paul may have just answered it, but so if we opted for the phased approach, then we'd go ahead and do the design of the roundabout now and sort of have that in our pocket for future consideration down the road. But
yeah, that's my assumption. I think there's a couple of ways to do it. I would recommend that we can continue design on the roundabout and get WashDOT's approval, because then it's really fundable if WashDOT has already approved it.
Okay, but what we'd put in place in the short run would be option 3.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Ashley.
All right, Commissioner Hay?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion at this point to include the option 3 intersection design in the 30% design package. And I'm happy to speak to that if it gets a second.
Okay, do we have a second? Commissioner Struck?
Yes, this is Vice Chair Stuck. I would second that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Hay, would you like to speak to that? We have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I wanted to also bring up the comments that we received from Commissioner Markson earlier today, because she's not able to be here, and it looked like her preference was for option 3, with a couple of other comments that wouldn't be related to the motion, but secondary comments. So my reasoning behind this is that we have 3 options here. It was really helpful to have WashDOT on the call tonight and to help us to understand that they like all 3 options. All 3 options are acceptable. And I see option 1 as presenting a number of design challenges. It's the most expensive option, brings some unpredictable and additional costs with it, and has the largest area. Option 2 is a negligible cost difference and presents its own unique challenges of possibly creating a convergence zone. And then I see the option 3 actually achieves all the goals that were stated tonight of improving the sight lines, improving safety by providing advance warning ahead of that intersection, and improving the shoulder space. So I see that we have a great option on the table that achieves all of those goals and does not necessarily preclude us from doing something later if it is needed. So my preference is to do this at this point. We can always do something else later if it's necessary. All the evidence we have at this point is empirical, or it's anecdotal. We don't have any empirical evidence that we can really measure at this point. So I think over time we can see if this option 3 is doing what we believe it will do, and then we can make adjustments if needed at a later date.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments about that before we vote? Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. Yeah, I would just echo what Ashley said and add a couple of things. One, I think, again, I also think about the impervious surface issue that really wasn't talked about a lot tonight, but I thank Paul for the kind of the cheat sheet on that. And option 1, does increase that quite a bit. And I know that that's a concern for many. Second, I think, again, as the staffer from WashDOT said, option 3 does improve things from what it currently is. So I think that's good. And the other thought I have is that, maybe 3 or 5 years from now, we might find that something totally different is needed, and then if you're kind of saddled with the hard core of a roundabout, you'd say, oh, why did we do that kind of thing? So I think this is a nice approach that gives us a lot of flexibility as we go forward. And as Paul said, try to really collect some data as to see what happens in terms of user behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Westberg?
I would just add to the discussion that the park has been, and this is to Ashley's point, that we have only anecdotal evidence as to the extent of the problem. The park has been in existence more than 25 years, and we have no recorded accidents between bikes and pedestrians. We do have several between bikes and dogs, but I think other aspects of this project will help address some of those concerns. And second, with regard to the language that the staff report brought up concerning the Aubrey-Davis master plan and the recommendation that we put a roundabout in there, I would point to language in the plan that says recommendations are only conceptual because they would have to be subject to further review and study, which is what we've been doing over the past few months. And so that I think we could justify departing from that language in the master plan on the basis of the time we've spent looking at this issue and the conclusions that Peter just articulated so well, and Ashley as well. So.
All right, thank you. All right, city staff, will you call the roll for the motion that's been made by Commissioner Hay and seconded by Vice Chair Struck, please?
Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Hay.
Aye.
All right, and the motion passes. Thank you to everybody for all of the work that's gone on this and the huge amounts of back and forth that we've had and how much we've learned about roundabouts and traffic safety doing this whole thing. Yeah.
Well, I would like to thank the commission too for their patience working through it. It's been an interesting process for us as well. I'm glad we've reached a consensus tonight so that we can move forward to making some improvements. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up, Commission, this is going back now to the matrix and Commissioner Westberg's question number 3. Commissioner Westberg asked if the roundabout was the only remaining issue. In the January meeting, there were also concerns expressed about the signs needed, and the overall cost of the project. And staff is in belief that signs have been modified a couple different times in the 30% design process, and that will be continued to be modified and refined in the 60% process, and we can address ongoing concerns in that way. And staff's opinion is also that the concern about budget is ultimately a city council issue, and that the commission can make recommendations about that if the city council will decide what to fund and how. So it's staff's opinion that we have a 30% design package, and I would just like to confirm that with the commission tonight.
Yes, I believe that we do.
Well,
Sorry, Commissioner Cohen, yeah.
hold on just a minute. We had a motion, the motion was passed. Paul, I don't think you need a positive head nod or anything. And this relates to a question I was going to ask. What happens next on this? Who does what, and where does it go? And does it come back here? Does it do anything? I'd just like to be clear on that. But no offense, but you had a very crisp motion, and it was adopted. It was passed. I couldn't quite hear Paul's, but I thought it was without disagreement. And so I don't know why there's any uncertainty in your mind, Paul, that you want to confirm it. Thanks.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood the motion.
Paul, if I could jump in for you, I think there was a secondary question that we had regarding the memo, which would be going forward, and that was the subsequent memo or subsequent motion that was included that we haven't gotten to yet. And I think that may have been where Paul's direction was going, of looking for a motion that would reconvene the subcommittee to finalize that and then bring it back at a future meeting.
Yes, thank you. All right, so the subsequent motion is I make a motion for the Parks and Recreation Commission to make a recommendation on the 30% design to City Council in its transmittal memo and refer the finalizing of that memo to a subcommittee. The transmittal memo will be considered by the PRC at a future meeting. So previously, the subcommittee was Commissioner Hay, Commissioner Cohen, and myself. Commissioner Westberg.
I'm off mute. Yes. Okay. Just before we consider that motion and taking up Paul's comment, the motion that we just passed addressed the roundabout, whether or not to include a roundabout in the 30% design. That's not the 30% design. That's a piece of it.
It's not. We had,
So it would be help, and I have no problem with following up with the motion to have a subcommittee write a transition memo. But before voting on that, I would like to see a schematic that now addresses the entirety of the 30% design, which is the trail from West Mercer Way through the mixing area by the restroom down the hill.
Now I understand Paul's comment, and I appreciate that. I apologize, Paul. I didn't understand where you were headed on it, and it was my mistake not making the distinction between the motion we just made and the total 30% design. My apology.
Right. Okay. So now we're all the way back to, was it in October that we wrote that memo and we're going to, and we're going to do it? So now, okay, so I will make the motion about doing the transmittal memo, which we started way back in September. But now we will include option 3, which is no roundabout in it. So that motion is on the table. Do I have a second?
I'm not sure staff fully captured that
Okay,
motion.
well, I just read the subsequent memo motion that was on the
Okay,
sheet that went out to us just before.
So I will second it because I think I have a few more things I want to clarify and discuss about it in terms of process.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and we'll now open it up for discussion. Commissioner Hay.
So I have similar comments as Commissioner Westberg about what that process looks like, because where we left it, if I remember correctly, was we needed to do the memo. And with that memo, there was a 30% design that came with it. And so now that we've made this decision regarding the 30% design, do we have a whole complete design to look at? Or would we just be looking at that sheet that we received showing option 3 in today's packet?
We do not, in this meetings packet, we did not include an entire 30% design. There was a 30% design package in the October meeting when the transmittal memo was going to be considered. And I think the only change to that package is the swapping the option 3 for the roundabout that was in that package. Everything else had been reviewed at the September meeting and had comments had been addressed at that point. So but I think to have a very clean process, we would come back at the next meeting with a 30% design plan set that this commission could look at and say, yes, this is it. And maybe have the transmittal memo at that meeting and approve the transmittal memo with the 30% package. And that's clean. And you just.
Okay, that helps to clear things up. So maybe the subcommittee would simultaneously be working on drafting the memo.
That's correct.
While that final 30% package is coming in, and then it could be reviewed together.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, Commissioner Westberg.
Sorry, Paul's comments address my question.
Very good. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I think I support waiting also. Another thing that's changed in the design is at least the way some of the signage is referenced and things that's different from what it was last fall. So I think we should just wait to have the package be a complete one. I'm a little mixed at this point on the importance or wisdom of having a transmittal memo. And the city, the staff doesn't require that with every single thing. And I don't know whether that's just make work or what, but I'm willing to abide by staff's recommendation that that's a good idea on this one.
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's important maybe in this situation because the commission is requesting to be involved in the 60% design phase review. And the only way to do that is with a memo, I believe.
Okay, can we have some clarification on that? Just to double check. If we need to do the memo and to be included on the 60% design.
If the commission would like to be involved with the 6% design, I would recommend the memo because that is not a customary process. So
Okay.
I would agree that the memo is appropriate here.
Okay, well, let's vote on this motion and then we can move on from there then. Commissioner Cohen, do you have one last thing to say or?
Yeah, if I want to go back and get something that and have the subcommittee work temporally in tandem with that, but we want to have a full package, do we need this, do we need any motion like this subsequent one now, or could that, or do I vote to defeat that? I don't want to start messing around with the wordsmithing the motion.
Well, let's do this motion and then if it doesn't pass, we'll do another motion. How about that?
Okay. I'm just looking at the motion again here.
Okay.
Can city staff read the motion so that everyone can hear, even people listening in to this meeting, if there are any left?
Sure thing. Chair McCarthy moved for the Parks and Rec Commission to make a recommendation on the 30% design to City Council in its transmittal memo and refer the finalizing of that memo to a subcommittee. The transmittal memo will be considered by the Parks and Rec Commission at a future meeting.
Jody, can I make a statement on that?
Yep.
Don Cohen, I'm going to vote against that because I think it's inconsistent with the idea we want to see a full package before we do anything that reads like it approves a 30% design.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. So we will, can you call the roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Or
Chair
you can
McCarthy?
withdraw, you can withdraw, you and Ashley
Okay,
could
right.
withdraw
Okay,
the motion.
I withdraw the motion then, and let's do a new motion to keep it going.
What's the new, I'm not sure we need a new
Do we
motion.
need a motion, or can we just say, we'll work in tandem with the subcommittee and getting the 30% package to review again? Can we do that, Ryan?
I would say that staff has received that direction and we will
Okay.
work toward that and bring it back into a subsequent meeting. I will work with you, Chair McCarthy, to determine what date that meeting will be, and that will be the agenda item.
Okay. Very good. All right, let's say that then. Okay, well then that concludes the third item of business for tonight.
I just want to say thank you to the design team.
Yes.
Appreciate you being here. It was very helpful.
It was very helpful, and we appreciate your patience with all of our questions and our learning curve.
You're welcome. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, you
Thank
too.
you.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the fourth item on our agenda packet, which is the Luther Burbank Park Sport Courts renovation. And we're going to welcome back Paul West, Capital Improvement Project Manager, and Sarah Bluvis, who's also a Capital Improvement Project Manager.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. All right. Can you see this in presentation mode? Perfect. Yes. So Sarah Bluvis, CIP Project Manager, also joined by Paul West, who you all know, as well as Eric Gold, a consultant from DA Hogan. The city has retained DA Hogan to complete the design for the Luther Burbank Park Sport Courts renovation, which we're here to talk about tonight. I'm going to go through a little bit of background since we haven't talked about this project at length in a while. Most of this information is the info that was included in your agenda packet tonight, so it shouldn't be new. Then we will go through kind of the discussion at hand, which is to deal with the third tennis court and determining whether or not we are going to maintain it as a shared use facility or stripe it permanently for pickleball. So one other thing that I do want to note before I get started, Eric is here. He's worked with us on some preliminary concepts prior to this project in terms of design. So if you have design questions tonight, I think we can answer them at a high level, but it's important to note that this project has not been designed yet. After we make the decision on the third court tonight, we will move forward with finalizing the design, which includes looking at configuration as well as potential number of pickleball courts. So I just wanted to put that out there, not trying to get into design weeds tonight. So a little bit of background, we are talking about the Luther Burbank Park tennis court facility, which was built in 1972. It currently includes 3 sport courts that are available for first come, first served play during the park hours. I think you all know that this facility was built below grade on dense soil, and that subgrade has settled pretty significantly over the last 50 years. So our courts have suffered from some major root intrusions and become wavy, which has affected the play and just general use. We closed the courts back in 2018 so the city could repair extensive cracks. You can see a beautiful crack in the courts here on your screen. And reopened them before the pandemic, and then renovations for the tennis courts were approved as part of the 23-24 city budget and our capital improvement program. So pickleball at Luther Burbank Park has been an active use for the past couple of years. As you all know, we have a very active pickleball drop-in activity at the community center, and that stopped when the pandemic closed the facility in March of 2020. Over the last couple of years, community members worked with the city to clean up the courts and return the nets and then temporarily stripe them for courts for pickleball. So if you go out there today, you'll see that they are temporarily striped for 3 pickleball courts, and the nets are lowered for pickleball play. But the tennis courts are still usable as tennis courts and other sport court activities. The courts are still shared use, but still open for first come, first served play. The pickleball players have been using a couple of different digital platforms to manage play. They'll go on and set up games together so they know who will be out there, but still on a first come, first served basis. I think you all are aware that the city received a King County Parks Capital and Open Space grant for our renovation project out at the courts. This is the grant program that's funded by the King County Parks Levy. And we received funds to design and renovate the courts over the 23-24 biennium. So that scope included permanently striping 2 of the 3 courts for pickleball for a total of 6 dedicated pickleball courts. And then striping the 3rd court for tennis pickleball shared use, which would result in 2 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court. So different than what we have now, because the pickleball play is temporarily striped only for 3 pickleball courts. The proposal we submitted, and that was subsequently funded, would provide up to 8 pickleball courts potentially, and still maintaining that 1 tennis court. So that's all the background. Tonight, we're just talking about that 3rd tennis court. Want to discuss with you all whether or not this court should be maintained in the scope as a shared use facility, or if we should look at converting that scope to convert the 3rd tennis court to a dedicated pickleball facility as well. So why are we coming to this conclusion at this point? Over the last, I'd say, year, city staff have been kind of exploring this project and gearing up for it and thinking about managing a multi-use facility. With this facility in particular, playing 2 different racket sports, a multi-use facility would potentially be difficult to maintain the experience for each sport. You heard a couple comments from some players earlier in public appearances, as well as received several comments from pickleball and tennis players that, you know, they're 2 very different sports and different atmospheres and, you know, energy. And so sometimes a shared use facility may diminish that experience for both sports if they're being played at the same time in the same facility. Multi-use facilities also pose some operational challenges, including when facilities are used on a first come, first served basis. So like I mentioned, we're not actively taking reservations for the tennis courts right now, although we do still receive complaints or calls, sorry, not complaints, but calls from the community when there are conflicts out on the court. And that's in part because a multi-use facility is just challenging to operate. You know, everyone wants to play their sport when they want to play it. And then also the 2022 PROS plan does provide guidance about pickleball courts and tennis courts. So the pros plan found that pickleball courts and tennis courts are about of equal importance among those who responded to our survey through the pros plan process. And the pros plan also advises that pickleball courts are most successful if clustered rather than spread. So you kind of heard again tonight in some of the public comments that it's a better use of the facility when there are a cluster of pickleball courts instead of a dual use facility with some pickleball courts and some tennis courts. Like I mentioned, we've received some additional public comments since we started down this conversation. You can see some signs that we placed at the Luther Burbank tennis courts to let people know that this project is coming soon, as well as to try to solicit more input. We also did some outreach to some of tennis groups on the island, although I will say because of the tennis clubs that are on the island, we don't have too many super organized groups of tennis players here on the island. So outreach has been a little bit difficult to them, but we are trying. So far tonight, you've received about 50 comments emailed to you all in the PRC, and some general themes from those comments, again, is that the sports have different pace of play, which impacts the court turnover and wait times. Players of both sports have said that they prefer to play on dedicated courts over shared use. And then there seems to be pretty strong support, at least from the comments that we've heard so far this week through the emails, and then again, public appearances, support for permanent striping for 8 pickleball courts, which we understand the facility has the capacity to absorb. 8 should work fine there. Last slide, and then I'll turn it over for questions and discussion. So our recommendation tonight is to amend our scope to permanently stripe the 3rd tennis court for pickleball use instead of striping for shared tennis and pickleball use. Again, the number of pickleball courts and court configuration will be finalized during the design, and the renovated facility will still be used on a first come, first served basis, as well as be available for other sport activities, sport court activities. So of course, the hitting wall, general play, if it's not taken up by other players at any time, but it would be permanently reconfigured or striped for pickleball. So tonight, after the decision is made on that 3rd court, our next steps include updating the grant scope with King County. I will say that our grant manager has indicated that there shouldn't be any impacts to our grant funding with this change. We're renovating an existing facility within the footprint of the existing facility, and the courts effectively will still remain sport courts. So just like now, you can go out there and hit tennis balls, bounce a basketball, other types of sports that you could play on a sport court, you would still be able to do that on these courts. So King County, at least right now, preliminary doesn't see any issues with this change. We'll finalize design and we'll come back to the PRC to present on progress at a future meeting or meetings, and then we'll construct the project. So it's anticipated to take place over 2 phases in fall and spring of 2024. The bulk of the work, as we noted in the staff report, will take place in the fall, hopefully including the repaving, the asphalt paving. And at that time, when the asphalt is repaved, we will temporarily stripe the courts again for use in between that time until they can be completely finished by the spring. So I'm going to leave it there, stop sharing my screen, and open it up for questions. Oh, wow.
Vice Chair Streck.
Yes, thank you. And Sarah, thank you for that presentation. Just a couple of factoids I'd like to just share with the commission. I did a little bit of research, and so the city of Mercer Island, our population, I'm going to round up, is about 26,000. And currently, according to the pros plan, we've got about 20 tennis courts. And so that averages out to about 1,300 individuals per court. I looked at several other communities on the east side, Bellevue, Sammamish, et cetera, we're the lowest of every, so we have a bounty of riches regarding sport courts, I guess is the best way to put it, relative to many other jurisdictions. And if we take and say, well, we're going to convert Luther Burbank to, either 6 or 8 courts, let's just use 8. I mean, again, we will have the most number of courts per population than anybody around. So again, I think we're in a really good position. But with that kind of just background, FYI, I did send a couple of questions, and I think the staff, answered them. I don't know if you're going to put that up or not on the screen. But one question I had was kind of, I've been reading and one of the kind of the nuisance factors of pickleball is the hollow pop noise, and neighborhoods and other cities have kind of complained about that. And just wondering if that issue is going to be something at Luther Burbank.
Thanks, Vice Chair Struck. Yes, so we thank you to everyone. I meant to say this at the beginning who submitted questions ahead of time. We did respond to them in the matrix that Ryan sent out earlier today. So if you reviewing that, responses don't seem satisfactory, please feel free to raise your question again now. Regarding the noise, we don't necessarily anticipate this will be an issue. Luther Burbank is a good location for something like this because it is a bit further away from, major kind of, not right next door to the houses in the same way that maybe some other neighborhood courts are. There's also probably potential that because the facility is lower, below grade, that'll help kind of muffle sound or anything like that. I know Vice Chair Struck, you had also asked about the impacts to wildlife, and I don't have any kind of information about that. That is something that we can kind of look into further as we're going through this process, but we don't necessarily anticipate that the noise will be a huge nuisance for this facility.
Thank you for that. If I may follow up, is there any plans to consider lighting when you do this project?
That's a good question. We did not scope for lighting within this project. I think Commissioner Burstein had asked if it might be possible to plan for that. And, down the road, if we're taking on additional improvements to lighting overall in the park, and/or can identify maybe some potential donors or other grant funds for that, it would be beneficial. So that's something that we can talk about with DA Hogan, knowing that it is of interest to the commission and I think to the community as well.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I would just like to be clear on what happens next, Sarah. So you're going to go, staff is, if this were approved, you're going to go to design. It's not going to go to the council in any way, and you would come back periodically to give the commission a status report, but no further action requested. I just want to be clear because there's been some uncertainty of this in some of our minds and some other proposals unrelated to this one.
Yep, that's correct. So for this facility, there's kind of a few pieces at play. It is just a renovation of an existing facility within the existing footprint. So there's not any major kind of expansion or significant change of use. We're not changing the sport court from sport courts to a swimming pool or something like that. This project is also, identified in the pros plan, a policy document. So we have that guidance as well. And it's also been budgeted already by and approved by the city council. For this is kind of the big piece that we need your input on, is that third court, how you all feel, since we originally had scoped it as a shared use. But yeah, going forward, there won't be kind of a 30% design review or anything like that. We'll just be providing periodic updates and keep you all posted on how the project's going.
Okay, thank you. I have one follow-up question, picking up on what Peter Struck asked about. if there were ever a formal consideration of lighting or even of covering, as I saw some things also, those are things that some people in the community have historically had strong feelings about it, particularly the lighting. And so I would assume that if this was approved the way you're asking tonight, that would not be taken as an approval of project scope increase that involved, for example, lighting, and that's something, if it matured at all, would come back to the commission for consideration.
I believe you're correct, Commissioner Cohen, but I think I am going to ask either Paul or Jason to confirm that as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, good evening. If there was, as Commissioner Cohen suggested, if there was a change in the lighting, that would be a significant change, and that would obviously, we understand the impacts and the concerns in the community. That would be something that would be brought back. But as Sarah mentioned, lighting is not part of this project scope now. If it is something that would be considered in the future, it would be something we brought back. Agreed.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners. Commissioner Westberg.
This is more of a comment than a question, since I sent in some questions that were addressed, but I just find it interesting. I'm still trying to understand process sometimes and which questions come to us and which questions do not, because and I'll just throw this out there for Ryan and you as the chair to noodle on, but I'm all for dedicating the 3 courts at Luther Burbank to pickleball. But since we had no role in framing the original recommendation, it's a little curious to me that now we're asked to come back and decide whether or not to dedicate the 3rd court. So anyway, that's my comment.
Okay, thank you for that. I also don't know the answer to that, but we've been asked about this now. And so may I have a motion to approve the recommendation to amend the project for the to change the tennis court to a pickleball use? Commissioner Burstein.
I so move. Motion is, I move we approve the city staff's recommendation to amend the project scope to convert 3rd Luther Burbank tennis court to pickleball.
And do I have a second? Commissioner
I
Westberg.
second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Burstein and a second by Commissioner Westberg. City staff, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Markson. Commissioner Westberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Hay.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, so the motion passes. And okay, so now we're going to go on to our added item, which is the bike skills area clarification.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is Peter Struck, Vice Chair. Yeah, when some of us read the staff memo to the city regarding City Council regarding the PRC recommendation on 30% design, there were just some questions, I think, and I think it's good to make sure that we're all on the same page. The first, I have three comments or / questions, issues. First was the comment I think that Commissioner Cohen had sent in regarding the recommendation was to move to the 60% design phase, and that for some reason was omitted. I don't know if that was just an oversight or not, but I would hope that that will be corrected, and I don't know if the staff can comment on that or not.
Good evening, Vice Chair Struck. I sent an email to the commission earlier this afternoon clarifying that. I went back and watched the video this morning, and the recommendation as described by Commissioner Cohen is correct. However, there was not a commitment from staff or it was not in the motion to bring back the 60% design to the commission. That was not the intent. That was not part of the discussion. The motion was to, I don't have it in front of me right now, but was essentially approve the 30% design and move to 60% design. And that is what is planned. It is not customary, it has not been customary for us to revisit the 60% design, as I talked about this earlier this evening. If the commission wants to do that, that is something that is made via the motion and would come back, but that is not a customary practice through our public works processes. I hope that answers the first question. I'm happy to send the email around further again if the commission would like.
Yeah, again, this is Vice Chair Struck. Thank you for that.
Can I follow up on that?
Sorry,
one?
I'm sorry.
This Don Cohen. This is why, no disrespect to staff, but every time we take an action now, I'm going to be asking, tell me what happens next. Tell me if it's coming back. Tell me if it isn't. Tell me whatever it is, because no offense, I feel slightly blindsided on the BSA one. It was asked whether staff was expecting a memo, a transmittal memo. The answer to that was no. Again, I'm not saying that there was some Machiavellian strategy to move this ahead, but I think some of us thought that it was going to be coming back. And I would ask staff to be very clear about that in various proposals, so that there aren't any misunderstandings. May have been a misunderstanding on the part of just a few of us.
Understood, Commissioner McCollum. We will be very clear and articulate what our intentions will be moving forward. As I stated in the February meeting, we intend to meet with specific stakeholders regarding a few remaining outstanding elements of this project, and we will still continue to do that. I know one of the questions that Vice Chair Struck is going to raise here in a second is the inclusion of the North Side Trail. There was discussion about that at the February Commission meeting. There was actually a request to include a trail off the 85th side. If you go back and watch the minutes, you will hear me say that the 85th trail connection is not going to be included because that has not been part of the public process to date. The North Trail has been discussed on different iterations. I believe one of the actual design concepts had the North Trail included. It was removed at the request, and then some commissioners asked for it to be considered as part of the next stage of the design process again. So that's why it was included in the exhibit to the council that will be going to the council next week. I'm happy to clarify that discussion point with the council next week when we meet. It's not our intent to have all 3 access trails getting into the BSA area. We expect to narrow that down as part of the further design process. I want to be very clear with the commission and the community. Right now, I have tried to lead a very transparent and public process regarding this bike skills area. And my apologies if the commission feels that I did not deliver.
So just to follow up, Jason, there's going to be future opportunities for the public to comment further on this, or no?
Our intent is to meet with some stakeholders regarding this project that does include the public. As we update the design and move further forward in this process, we will update Let's Talk. The Let's Talk platform will still be open and active, so the community can still continue to participate and engage in this process. At this stage, we are not intending to hold another public meeting. We've done 2 public meetings, we've done 2 surveys, we've done a number of Parks Commission meetings. That is not our intent to hold another public meeting in this process. If the council would like us to further that discussion, then they can request that as part of their action on Tuesday night. And staff will follow through if that's the will of the council.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen or Vice Chair Struck, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, Don Cohen, I do. This relates to Jason's anticipation of one of Vice Chair Struck's questions about the Island Crest Way access trail being on the schematic that went to council. I want to be very clear on this. I don't think anybody is trying to, this isn't a conspiracy theory idea on my part, but staff was sending something to the council saying, this is the recommendation of the commission. it wasn't the recommendation of the commission, even if one commissioner or two commissioners mentioned keeping the idea of the Island Crestway access in play for the future. It wasn't. And this is part of the whole process that I want to just be very clear on in the future. What are we recommending? What the action taken? Informality breeds misunderstanding, at least potentially. And so I take Jason's sort of apology. I appreciate that. I'm not asking for an apology that he or anybody else on staff was trying to put one over on people. I just, with all due respect, I would suggest somebody needs to read some of these things a little in more detail before they go to staff. There was no reason that should have been included, in my judgment. There was no reason that the motion should not have been just copied and pasted in there. And that's the way procedurally, in my judgment, it ought to be done. Thanks.
Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Don. Jason, so regarding the motion or the recommendation, excuse me, that was made where we included the east and west trails around the tennis courts. So now that there's not going to be any more further input from the commission or the public other than with specific supporter groups, like you said, who's going to make that decision? Are we going to keep all three? I think you said you were not. So who makes that decision now?
It will be a decision that will be made as part of the design process after we meet with the stakeholder groups. And I will say the stakeholders, as the commission has heard, are on both sides of the aisle regarding this issue. And so when the staff and the design team meets with those stakeholder groups, we will fine tune. There will probably be give on both sides to ultimately land on a decision. As I mentioned at the February meeting, staff, your parks maintenance staff went out to the site, walked it. There is a preference over the west, over the east from the maintenance.
Yeah, we heard that. Yes.
However, I also said that it really is indifferent to us, right? If we want to build the facility that the community wants, and if you want the east side over the west side, if that's what the stakeholders prefer, then we're happy to do that. It will be part of the design process. It's much like the way some of the subtle changes that take place for the rest of public works projects or park projects happen from that 30 to 60 to 100% design. I'm certainly happy to report back based off of what the decision was made or what we're leaning towards and the feedback that we got. But again, I'll remind the commission, I actually put that on the slide for the commission to decide, make a decision on at the last commission meeting, and there was no decision made. And the motion was made to include both, which is perfectly acceptable as well. But there was a decision to be asked at the last commission meeting, and it didn't get landed. It is not our intent to have all three access trails to this facility. It will be fine-tuned from 30 to 100% design.
Okay, well, all right. Thank you for that. I think, and maybe I would just ask Councilmember Reynolds as our liaison when this comes up next week that he may be able to provide some perspective on this whole issue, because I just think that right now, to your point, Jason, if you had said, well, we're only going to pick one, because we had said, well, let's throw them all in there. You had said, well, we're only going to end up with one. That might have changed somebody's vote one way or the other. I don't know, but that's water over the dam at this point. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Cohen.
Well, I don't know how this will go or whether it's even proper or whether it would get a second, but I'm going to move that staff bring back to the Parks and Rec Commission its decision on access trails. For commission consideration and action. Maybe I already said that. Maybe I said action twice. You got the idea though. And I won't feel bad if that doesn't get a second. I
I will second that for the sake of discussion and figuring out process going forward.
All right, so we have a motion. And did you get the motion, Raven?
Thank you, Chair. No, I did not. Could that be repeated, please?
You want me to try to restate it a little more articulately?
Yes.
Don Cohen, I move that that staff bring back its recommendation on bike skills area access trails to the commission for action before something, I don't know, before commencing construction. I don't even know if that is right, but that's the best I can do at the moment.
And seconded by Commissioner Hay.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll have some discussion. Commissioner Westberg, you also have your hand up.
I do, thank you. And it's more to make a comment that in general on Jason's statement, because if you were looking for a decision and we didn't give you one, it's a lost opportunity for both of us. And it's an opportunity we shouldn't pass on in the future. And maybe a way to tackle that going forward is to do as we did tonight with regard to the bike safety improvements, is to have a suggested list of motions drafted ahead of time that staff is looking to get the commission's approval on, so that staff has the guidance they need to move forward. Because unfortunately, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not familiar with what the discussion was, but I do think it's a missed opportunity for both the commission and the staff if you were looking for that and it somehow wasn't teed up adequately that we provided that recommendation. As far as going back and revisiting it now, I'm not sure from a process standpoint how we would do that. If your timetable is to present it to council next week, and I guess I would, in response to Commissioner Cohen's motion, I would count on the judgment and wisdom of Councilmember Reynolds to set the context for what the council is being shown, and to point out that the access trails shown on the schematic are not set in stone, and that in fact they're still to be, the actual location of the access is still to be resolved, and that there was no specific recommendation coming from the commission on that particular question.
If I may, as I spoke with Vice Chair Struck this afternoon, I'm happy to include 2 slides in my presentation to the council on Tuesday night that articulates just that. And I will happily do that. I'm trying to be as transparent with this process as possible, and I will happily include that discussion point for the council for their consideration. No, there's nothing preventing us from doing that.
Okay, that's awesome. Commissioner Hay?
Thanks. My thoughts are along the same lines as were voiced previously by other commissioners, that, and as Jason mentioned, he did give us that opportunity at the last meeting to indicate a preference for east or west. And some of us gave our comments, but we didn't officially decide. So I was thinking that tonight would be an opportunity to do that. And that preference for the east or west could be added to the agenda packet for the council. And, we could say February 2, we decided this, and on March 2nd, we indicated a preference for the east or west side and additional consideration for a north entrance. So I think it'd be really easy to add that sentence to the agenda packet sometime in the next 5 days. If the commission is interested in giving a preference for east or west, Just given that we didn't really hit that point at the last meeting. So that is one possibility that we could make that decision tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, this Don Cohen. One of the problems with that idea is I see during our meeting tonight, a letter was sent to the city council and to the commission and to several staff people about I think it's by some of the neighbors who have spoken about the bike skills area. I don't know whether they address this access issue or not. I assume it does. I didn't read it because I was trying to pay attention to the meeting. And so to do a vote on it, I know what I would feel, but I'm not sure what they feel. And frankly, I know some of those people who I run into when I'm walking, and they feel that almost everything the bike users have requested has been implemented, and I've got no problem with that. And they feel that nothing they've recommended or commented on has been done, even though, as Jason pointed out a few minutes ago, even though staff, the east or west of the tennis court is not a do or die issue to staff at all. So that was, I think, the wording that you used at the last meeting. I didn't mean to paraphrase incorrectly. So in any event, I want to have my motion stand to, at least tee up, however it goes, tee up that at least there are some of us who, or at least one of us who feels that that issue needs further vetting. And I'm not sure I'm ready to vote on something to sort of amend the staff report, amend our recommendation, and then amend the staff report to the council.
Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you. Jason, kind of your earlier comment regarding, working with different groups. If we were to take Commissioner Hayes' suggestion and make a vote tonight, do we kind of renege on that? I don't want to say it's a promise, but just that comment that there was going to be opportunity for additional input. I don't know the answer to that. I just raise the question.
It's a good question. Certainly if commission takes a vote over, let's just pick one, say they choose the east side trail, and we go meet with the users and the different subgroups, and they really don't like the east side, they really prefer the west side, then yeah, there is a potential conflict there.
Yeah, I guess my thought is I don't want to kind of change horses in midstream, so to speak, and just let this play out. And I appreciate your suggestion to kind of have two slides at the council meeting, just to kind of differentiate a little bit that what we did vote, and yes, that we wanted to explore the north side. Thank you.
Commissioner Hay?
Yeah, just one last comment, that my idea of making that decision tonight was just to provide additional information that maybe was left out of the previous meeting, in case that is helpful to council. Again, it's just our recommendation. If in the process they decide, nope, doesn't work, or we don't like it, we know that might be thrown out. So I would not be in favor of bringing this back at some later date, but I would be in favor of making a decision tonight if the commission is interested. I mean, yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, well, let's do Dawn's motion. We'll vote on that, and then we can go from there. Raven, can you please read back the motion that is on the table?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Cohen moved that staff bring back its recommendation on the bike skills area access trails to the Parks and Rec Commission for action before commencing construction.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Can you please call roll?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Chair McCarthy,
Nay.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
A.
Commissioner Markson, Commissioner Westberg,
Nay.
Commissioner Hay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have a tie. So what happens in a tie?
Is it a tie?
Yeah,
We
Rick,
throw up our hands and go get a drink.
Count that again. I had 4
okay,
nays.
Yeah, that's what I had.
I
Oh,
have 4
sorry.
too. And if it is a tie is a fail.
okay. Sorry,
4
Th-
nay, 2 ayes.
okay, very good. Okay, so the nays have it. Okay, does somebody else want to propose us another motion? Commissioner Hay.
Thanks. I make a motion that the commission makes a recommendation on the east or west entrance to add to the recommendation in the agenda packet for Tuesday.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Just a point of clarification, the way the motion is worded, then we'll have to have another motion proposing which entrance, whether it's the east or the west. So if we're going to try to do this in one motion, Ashley, you should propose one or the other. In other words, you're proposing that we make a decision, your motion proposes that we make a decision, but not what that decision is. So we'll need another motion to actually make the decision.
Sure, I can withdraw the motion and make a new one if it's
Okay,
preferred.
motion withdrawn.
I withdraw the motion. Okay, I make does somebody else want to go or you want me to go for it?
You go for it.
Okay, I make a motion to recommend the entrance to the west of the tennis courts as opposed to the east of the tennis courts with consideration of a north entrance as well.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Burstein has seconded it. Did you get that, Raven?
If I could repeat it just for confirmation.
Okay.
Commissioner Hay moved to recommend the entrance to the west of the tennis court as opposed to the east with consideration of a north entrance as well.
Correct. Sorry, City Council Member Reynolds, I see your hand up.
Yes, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, first, an apology. I've been quiet for the last 20 minutes because I've been driving. I'm now parked in a parking spot temporarily. Couple of things. One, I think the council, I can't speak for my fellow council members, but I know I would appreciate guidance from the commission on what they think. I'll just make that observation. So that I have no vote here, but I'll just make the general comment that guidance is always welcome and appreciated, and guidance as specific as possible is also welcome and appreciated. Well, there's of course no guarantee that the council will do what the commission wants. We want to know what you think. The second general comment I'll make is that, speaking for myself, and I suspect for a number of council members, the important thing is to get the facility built. And I worry that any action that causes repeated runs back to the Parks and Rec Commission almost guarantees that this facility will not be built for this summer. And I think that would be a darn shame. So to the extent that you have input, I would encourage you, whatever it is, to make it tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, with all respect to Councilmember Reynolds, in your inbox and in all of our inboxes, I'm now looking at this, is a detailed email and a 4-page memo by people, and I'm looking now at some drawings and comments that talk about the west of their opposition to the west entrance. And these people didn't have any idea that this was even going to be discussed tonight. So I'm going to vote against this motion for two reasons. One, I don't favor the west over the east, but more importantly, these people's input will not have been taken into account at all, and they won't have had a chance to weigh in on it again, other than at the council level, I suppose, if they did it, including what they said. So.
And it went to the commission and to the council members, correct?
I think so, yeah. That's what it looked like before. Hold on, it came in right. Let's see, looks like.
PRC is CC'd. It went to the council.
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't, it was just, we were just sent it as an FYI or, okay. Commissioner Hay?
Yeah, I'm just seeing that as well in the inbox, and I'm not really sure who all they're referencing because it's sent from a group listed as 3 people, and then it says, I'm actually just reading this right at the moment because it came in during our meeting. A majority, but not all of us, strongly prefer the entrance on the east side, but I only see 3 people on the list. So I don't know if that means 2 and 1 or if this is representing a larger group. But these are the same people, to my knowledge, that spoke at the previous meeting when we discussed this. So I think this is the second time now that we're discussing this topic of the entrance. And I'm not tied to this in any way. If we don't want to decide on an entrance, that's fine. Have it. I think it's fine to have it go to council with these 3 entrances. But if we do have a preference, I think it's great to give that guidance. They might not like it at the end of the day and choose something else, which is fine. But I just thought a little bit more clarification might be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. City Council Member Reynolds, you have your hand up. I just want to make sure you don't have any other comments before we vote on our motion.
That was an old hand associated with me not knowing how to work Zoom on my phone. Sorry about that.
No worries. I just want to double check.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Struck.
Yeah, it's just Ashley, a point of clarification on your motion where we say consideration of the north. So how is that going to play out? I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that staff will consider it and say one thing or another, bring it back to us, go to council?
Yes, and my intention with that was to choose either east or west rather than both of those.
Right,
and
I
then
get that.
to indicate that we have a preference for considering a north option. So, if it were to come down to we're only going to do one option, this would say we prefer west to the east, and we also think that a north entrance should be considered. So possibly 2 access points. Sorry if that's not particularly clear. Does that seem clear to say?
So, well,
consider a north entrance as well. I personally think it'd be great to have north and south entrances. So I think, it may go without saying because it's already on there. So it is being considered, right? Because we have 3.
Well, I think explored was the term that was
fine.
used in the motion, but yeah, I'm just trying to understand what a vote would say. Would it send that, yeah, we want the north, or is it, well, we just want to consider it? I guess that's kind of considered to me is kind of ambiguous as to what we really are saying.
Can staff read the motion again, just to clarify that language?
Yes. Hay moved that the entrance to the west of the tennis courts, as opposed to the east of the tennis courts, with consideration of a north entrance as well. So actually, I was going to ask for a repeat on the motion because it doesn't read I feel like I'm missing pieces on that as well.
Yeah, we can change the word consideration to preference, with a preference for a north entrance as well. Do I need to withdraw and make a new motion, or do it? Now I feel like we're doing Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
A few meetings ago.
Commissioner Burstein?
I'll second the motion as amended, and just as a comment, to me, that's what a 60% design should do, is to evaluate the efficacy of what the 30% design presents and make sure it aligns to budget and other considerations that the staff from a oversight and responsibility would make the decision at that point as it continues in its design. So we may express the preference for north design. The council may debate that and say, no, we really don't want one, and that would certainly give staff a direction. And if it's left open during the 60% design, they would make a determination on the feasibility of doing that and either move forward or just focus on the one site. But I agree with Councilmember Reynolds. I think putting our preference in front of the council is much more desirable than leaving it open and saying, you figure it out.
Okay, Commissioner Cohen?
Yes, Don Cohen. Maybe some of my colleagues remember a lot more information being provided on the Island Crest Way idea than I do, but we haven't heard from the city traffic engineer about impacts. We haven't heard about safety issues other than maybe in passing. We haven't heard about impacts on that northeast quadrant and activities and so forth. So I'm not prepared to express a preference. That may wind up being something that ought to be considered, but we've had very, very little consideration of that northeast entrance. And so I'm gonna vote against this present motion.
Okay, well, let's have a vote on the motion then.
Can I just repeat the motion? I filled in a couple blanks in hopes that it makes more sense. Hay moved the Parks and Rec Commission recommend to the City Council that the entrance to the west of the tennis courts as an access trail as opposed to the east of the tennis courts, with the preference of a north entrance as well.
Does that sound correct, Ashley? I thought sounded correct to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have Burstein seconding the motion.
Correct.
Would you like a vote, Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Chair McCarthy?
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck?
Nay.
Commissioner Cohen?
Nay.
Commissioner Burstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Markson? Commissioner Westberg?
Nay.
Commissioner Hay?
Aye.
Okay,
Three ayes, 3 nays.
so that motion is thrown out. Commissioner Westberg?
I would just say I would be open to a motion that would just provide a recommendation between the east and west. And then because I find Commissioner Cohen's arguments about the north convincing, we really haven't discussed that other than very, very conceptually, and that would be something that staff and the designers with input from the public would need to look at very closely, because there's several options of what might happen there. But we have looked more carefully at the east and west option.
Okay, so then are you proposing a motion then?
Yes, I move that the commission endorse the west trail as the preferred option for access to the bicycle skills area.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Did you get that, Raven?
I'm sorry, I missed who seconded it.
Commissioner Burstein.
Yes, if I could read it over.
Yes.
Commissioner Westberg moved that the Parks and Rec Commission endorse the West Trail as the preferred option to the bike skills area.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Can you please do the roll?
Yes, Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Nay.
Commissioner Cohen,
Nay.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Hay.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes for the west entrance, and we'll continue to watch the public or about the north entrance. So I think, yeah, I think that we've done all that we can do on the bike skills area for now, but hopefully that's helpful for City Council Reynolds going into the meeting on Tuesday to have the west preference over the east. Commissioner Hay?
Thanks. I just had one final comment. I am skimming this letter that we just received, and it does bring up some considerations that throughout the design process to make sure that we have all stakeholders considered in those meetings as it's designed. So I think making sure that everyone is included in that process would be really important going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Commissioner Cohen?
Yes, Don Cohen. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the commission for putting this issue on adding it to the agenda and for giving consideration to some of the comments that I made, even though they didn't win the day. But I'm a lawyer. I'm used to losing things. So
Well,
anyway, just thank you for that.
Of course, we're here to hear what everybody has to say. Okay, let's go on to the fifth item of business, which is the 2023 planning schedule update with Ryan Daly.
Thank you, Chair McCarthy. You will be getting a phone call from me, Chair McCarthy, next week to assist in deciding when our next meeting should be. So we'll figure that out, and I will be reaching out to the commission as a whole to check availability around sort of some dates you give me some ideas around. So more to come on that. As a reminder, our April meeting was falling on Passover, getting very close into spring break as well. So there's always some scheduling conflicts for commission members as well as members of the public. And we want to make sure that we have that ability to have people available when at all possible. And that's just as another reminder with some of the comments I heard tonight from the commission. A key role of this Parks Commission is to serve as a forum and an opportunity for community members to come forward and speak on any issue related to Parks and Recreation. That door is always open, and staff works really hard to continue to offer those opportunities as we've opened up the community center and have the smart board available up there. So I just want to remind anyone who watches this video that opportunity does not go away. So that's always an opportunity to continue to provide feedback. But with that, I thank you, and I will be talking to you soon, Chair McCarthy.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say that our next regular Parks and Rec meeting, commission meeting, is scheduled for the month of April, and it is to be determined date. So stay tuned. The time now is 7:53 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and stay safe and healthy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe.